Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 3 of Nerdgasm. It is here. We are loud and proud. Nerdgasm is back for another season, and we have a barn burner of a match for you today as Jacoby Bancroft, one of the rising stars of our rookie triple threat series, takes on the seasoned, the very heavily calloused veteran of Jim Green. He's been around the community for a couple of years now. I'm very excited to see this match, but we have some judges first, starting off with the co-commissioner, like one of the three heads of Nerdgasm, fucking Dabber himself. Cody, how do you feel?
Blocking out my haters. No, I'm really excited. You say this is season 3. I like to say this is season 2. Because who knows what the hell happened before we took over. I don't take that as Jessica Morgan and Brian Fernandez got, I think, wins in that. So let's not say that even happened. But I'm excited. Jacoby was one of the strongest people that debated in the triple threat, and Jim ticked off someone so bad last time that they just, I think, quit debate altogether. So I'm excited to see if he can do it again or what happens. Crossfire for the win. Let's go.
Yeah. All right, and our last judge, or the only other judge that we have on call, he doesn't dab, so he is instantly more likable in my eyes, and that is the OG Irishman, Doug Castle. Doug, God damn it, now I got to dab
too. All three of us dabbing tonight. No, I'm excited for this match. I've seen Jacoby and Jim both debate, and it's going to be a pretty interesting thing. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
All right, let's go to our competitors first, we'll start off with Jim. Jim, you have dab to you too. Last time you were in here, you lost to who was now the Nerdgasm champion, Tim Bracala. You are now coming up against the white hot person in your crossfire of Jacoby. How do you feel?
I feel good. As we know, I actually probably would have beat Tim if I didn't just go sky high for the fuck of it. And Tim picked the obvious answer of Pirates of the Caribbean. After like a minute of thinking, it was that close of a match against the person that was champion. Other than that, I don't believe I've lost. I think the only other match I had has already been discussed at this point. So yeah, I'm just ready to go. And the only time I've ever been in a match with Jacoby, it doesn't actually exist. So I don't know if we should talk about that.
Okay, we'll now go over to your opponent. He is a member of the New British Empire, but that means nothing. That is Jacoby Bancroft. Jacoby, last time you were in the Nerdgasm realm, you were considered one of the greatest triple threats of that season, probably one of the greatest matches of the year in general. But now you're going up against Jim in a one-on-one format. How do you feel?
Scared, nervous, just big, very sweaty, just very anxious. Got this pit in the pit of my stomach. But I'm ready to go. I'm excited to see. I was doing okay until you hyped up Jim as like the messiah of this debate thing, and now it just shot my confidence way down. So overall, this is going to be fun. Yeah, I'm glad to be on a call with Jim for the first time ever. We've never ever been on another call before. So it's nice to meet you, Jim.
All right, well, let's get right into it. We have, so how it's going to work is they're going to be given they decided 4 different categories in the fandom, the extended fandom universe to pick from. We gave them questions, they submitted answers. It is essentially going to be a race to 3 points. In the event of a 2-2 tie, we are going to a speed round tiebreaker. Each question will have a minute opening, followed by 5 minutes of free form, and then a 4-second closing. The 2 rules that we have: no filibustering and no touching of the hair or face. But let's get right into your first category, a beloved category by both competitors, and that is Rocky. And your question is, what was the hardest fight in the Rocky/Creed franchise? Jacoby, you are going to be going first. You will have 1 minute to present your opening argument. Time begins whenever you start talking.
Okay. All right, so there is one Rocky fight that kind of stands above the rest in terms of being the hardest, and that's Drago in Rocky IV. I mean, it was the first and really the only time Rocky wasn't up against a human. He was up against a machine, an unstoppable lab-grown weapon, the likes of which the boxing world really had never seen before. But even if you kind of take away the fact that Drago was engineered to be a boxing champion, you have these incredibly high stakes around the fight that make this the toughest Rocky fight. I mean, the movie established that Drago was a killer. I mean, Rocky could very well die if he steps into that ring. That's a plot element that had not been used before, and it immediately amplifies the stakes around the match. I mean, it forced Rocky to train harder than he ever did before to overcome just these truly spectacular odds, and especially compared to other fights, this was a tough one.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Cool. Was that? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll now go over to Jim for your opening arguments. You have 1 minute. Time begins when you start talking.
In the first Creed movie, Adonis Creed going to meet Rocky Balboa for the first time, asks Rocky to describe his father that we know that Rocky doesn't, asks him to describe Apollo Creed. And Rocky, and I quote, says, he was the perfect fighter. And that's exactly who Rocky had to go up against in Rocky 1. As far as the film is concerned, the film does not center around the climactic boxing match at the end like Jacoby's pick does. But I think the question is, it's not who has the most entertaining fight. It's who is the hardest fight. So that is why my pick is Apollo Creed, who Rocky himself proclaimed as a perfect fighter.
All right. Both ending 10 seconds early. Weirdly coincidental, but we'll see how that works out. We now go into the 5 minutes of freeform. You guys know the drill. We're going to remove Inky and Dinky from the call here, so you guys get the limelight. 5 minutes, guys. Let's get it.
Do I have to be on screen? Does it matter who goes first?
No, it doesn't. But I can tell you, Jacoby, that those were very fun words that you used to describe an amateur boxer. That was all of that machine and lab grown. Your guy is a 24-year-old amateur boxer that beats a 5 years retired past his prime Apollo Creed. He kills him, but Apollo does not train at all for this fight. Just goes into it because Drago's an amateur boxer. And then, he does die. So I will give you that point. But Creed was way past his prime and retired at that point.
I think it's very funny how you say Apollo does not train for his fight, because that's exactly what happened in the first Rocky movie. Apollo did not train for his first fight with Rocky. I'm surprised you went with the first fight and not the second fight, because you say he was a perfect fighter. The first fight wasn't very hard because Apollo wasn't in his top form. He didn't take Rocky seriously. That's the whole point of the movie, that nobody takes Rocky seriously. So the fact that Apollo is coasted by, didn't train as hard as he should, and then had to start actually fighting in the main fight at the very end of the movie shows that this was not the hardest fight that Rocky could have made. That Rocky could have had.
I mean, that is a fair point, that both that Apollo does not train necessarily for Rocky, but in the beginning of the movie where his opponent drops out 5 weeks before. So towards the end of November, his opponent drops out. So Apollo was already in camp for another legitimate heavyweight contender. So it's not like he didn't train at all or he was completely out of shape or retired. Apollo was already training for a championship fight against a legitimate contender. And then once Rocky comes into the picture, he does tend to slack off and put more Sugar Ray Leonard into it, of like going on TV and doing TV spots instead of training. But he was actually training for a championship fight before slacking off.
Yeah, before everything, but as soon as he found Rocky out, he didn't take it at all. There's a scene in the first Rocky movie where they're interviewing how tough that Rocky is by hitting meat, and it's literally his like trainer or someone in his posse, because Apollo's off slacking off, drinking and partying, while he's like, "Hey champ, you should come look at this," while Apollo's literally just partying it up right there. I mean, that is not the path to Rocky's hardest fight. You have to turn it back to the hardest fight where, sure, that Drago was an amateur boxer, but he was made to be a boxer. He punched far beyond the weight of a normal man. He was built far better than a normal man. He was a beast of a human being. So even though he wasn't a trained boxer, he could kill people. If you have to fight someone who can kill people in the ring, that is going to be the tougher fight.
I think the famous saying goes, styles make fights. And what's Drago's style other than he has an 84? He's tall. He's 6'5". He has an 84-inch reach advantage, and he's on steroids. Good job. You're knocking out amateurs in the Russian military. Congratulations. Apollo Creed, before fighting Rocky, nobody was ever not getting knocked out by Apollo. He had 47 wins by knockout. He was 47-0. He knocked out. He says Creed in 3. I think it's mostly because, again, Rocky is Rocky in the first movie. He barely beats Spider Rico, and but other than that, Apollo never loses. Nobody ever goes the distance with Apollo. That's the one thing is Rocky's goal isn't even to win. It's just an accomplishment to go the distance with Apollo Creed.
And I'm glad you brought that up as well, because if we're doing what makes the toughest fight overall, the point that Rocky is trying to do with Apollo is go the distance. That's great. I mean, that's a great motto to have. What he's trying to do with Ivan Drago is avenge his best friend's death. That immediately puts way more pressure on him and creates a tougher fight scenario.
That makes a better movie, less of a harder fight. Rocky at that point had been like the world heavyweight. Maybe he had lost it recently, but Rocky was like still a heavyweight champion fighting a guy that had one professional fight, and it was against a retired Apollo Creed.
And Ivan Drago is built so much that he can even take that Rocky all the way to like the final round of the match. I mean, you're saying that he's an amateur boxer. It shouldn't be a knock against him because he is still so powerful. And even his early matches was able to take the champion level boxer Rocky to the final round. And it forced Rocky to train in a completely new way and completely change everything about his fighting style in order to come out on top.
Sure. Brooklyn's counting us down, so why not?
All right, cool. It was a really good back and forth. I was quite impressed. Bravo, gentlemen. We'll now go into the closing arguments. We are going to start with Jim on this one. You have 45 seconds to wrap up your argument.
In the end, Jacoby can claim that Drago has like all the goods and stuff to be a harder opponent, but he really doesn't. Rocky had been a heavyweight champion, so Rocky as a fighter is already higher, and then and more skilled. And Apollo is more skilled and at a higher level than Drago was at, other than the fact that Drago is taking steroids. Damn it, Rocky takes so much damage in that first fight against Apollo Creed that his eye becomes damaged, and then Mickey makes him change his complete fighting stance to then protect that eye in the second fight. The only thing that Jacoby has is that Drago could be good. He does have these skills, but Apollo Creed was good.
All right, cool. Over to Jacoby to wrap up the question.
Okay, overall, Rocky versus Ivan Drago is the toughest fight that Rocky ever faced. I mean, even Jim just said Rocky suffered so much damage by getting his eye cut in the first Rocky movie. The Rocky 5 is all about how he suffered brain damage and cannot fight anymore because of his fight with Ivan Drago. That makes it the toughest fight. And even if you look at the hardest things around the fight overall, I mean, if Rocky loses his fight against Apollo, the very first fight, then yeah, he proves that he shouldn't be a fighter and he should retire and he lives a happy life with Adrian. No biggie. If he loses his fight with Ivan Drago, he could very well die in the match because Ivan Drago proves to be a killer of people because he is so powerful. Plus the fact that if he just doesn't avenge his friend's death, then the weight of that could be even more than anybody could bear.
All right, cool. All right, guys, that was a really good first question. We're going to go on now to the judges for their decision. I'm going to go first, and then I'll pass it off to the other three stooges in the bunch. Freeform was pretty even. I didn't really think that there was an edge, but I think the one thing that that's gonna give me or give the point to this person is honestly Jim's point of the steroids. I just didn't quite hear a defense from Jacoby on that, and I think that's ultimately what Jim sort of centered his argument around, kind of in that vein. Like, yes, he does have all these wins, but it's because of this. But a very good back and forth. Quite impressed. But I'm not the only judge here. I'm gonna pass it off to Cody. Who gets your point and why?
Yes, I was waiting for Jacoby to turn the steroids into it. Yeah, that's what makes it the hardest fight. The dude is going against illegal and literally beating the crud out of him with an illegal substance. So now you're fighting with a guy that's cheating. It just wasn't enough to rebuttal. It was actually a really good point for Jim. Jim used his tactic well in this fight, so I have to give it to Jim.
All right. Well, Jim does get the first point. Doug, your vote did not count, but how would you have swayed?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you guys. I was waiting for a rebuttal for the steroids. And I didn't hear one. It was probably it was super even keel though, except for that point.
All right, cool. All right, guys. So Jim does strike blood first.
Yes.
We will now go into question number 2, which is going to be in the old Fandom TV neck of the woods. If any of our OG multiplex viewers remember that division, it is the DC TV. And your question is, what is the best cameo in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover? And this question was submitted before the very big. Big one. I'm not go into spoilers. So those that do know, that one was not eligible. So we'll now go to Jim for his answer. We got a minute. Time begins when we start talking.
So first, to present my answer, I'm not even going to take you to Crisis on Infinite Earth. I'm going to take you to the previous team up, which I assume it is. There's so many of them. I'm taking you to the Elseworlds cross whatever team up to where we get one scene of Oliver and Barry going to a place that we're familiar with called Smallville, Kansas. And just the cameo of the theme song of the Smallville TV show got the internet to blow up and was like, oh, that's like the coolest part of Elseworlds. So what could they do to even top that? Bring Tom Welling in and Erica, I can't pronounce her last name, Dur, whatever it is, and actually have a Smallville part and see where they are in their lives in Crisis on Infinite Earths.
All right, cool. Over to Jacoby now for your opening statement. What do you feel was the best cameo in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover events?
Sorry, starting a timer. Okay. Okay, Crisis on Infinite Earths was mostly incredible, and it was jam packed with a lot of these fun cameos and nods to the DC lore overall. But I think there's really only one cameo that had a super important impact on the story and on the characters, and that's John Wesley Shipp's Barry Allen from Earth 90. It's a cameo that not only pays off a story thread that was 6 years in the making on CW's Flash TV show, but also provides a heroic ending to the Flash's 1990 TV show where Earth 90 Flash is from, in a way that's incredibly emotional because it has the Earth 90 Flash sacrifice himself to save Barry and the multiverse. The reason that this is the best cameo that there is because it works both in tandem with the past show, the past of everything that came before in the DC lore, and worked with the current Crisis that it is, and that's why it's the best.
All right. Excellent job, gentlemen. We'll remove Beavis and Butthead from the call, and we'll go into the 5-minute freeform. You guys know the drill. Let's get it on.
So you brought up a great point about the Elseworlds with the Smallville theme song igniting everything, the excitement for it. And then my problem with Tom Welling's thing is that their actual appearance on there was a vast disappointment. I think Tom Welling's cameo as Clark Kent is a huge disservice to the character. It's a fun little individual moment, but it's completely antithetical to everything that Smallville stood for. And I think that's just wrong.
I think I completely disagree. Whereas Smallville in Smallville, we had this relationship that we hadn't really ever gotten to see in the films with Christopher Reeve or any other like Lois and Clark or whatever, that he had this relationship with Jonathan Kent to where we got to see the whole relationship of it. We won't have to go too into it, but that's essentially when we see where Smallville is at now, is he's Jonathan Kent. He's living on the farm. We see in the flashes of the news clippings that the classic Superman stories still happen. But now he gave it up to have children, and that's worth more than any powers. And now he's completely content being basically kind of being Jonathan Kent now on the farm.
But that is the ultimate problem of that. Sure, you're thinking of a highlight of a relationship, but the point of Smallville himself, the entire show of 10 seasons, it was Clark learning that he could not have a normal life, that he had these great powers upon him, and that it was his responsibility to be the Man of Steel, to save the day, to become the Superman that we know and love. If you stick that finale where he has given up his powers at the end of Smallville, that is the worst.
But it's not at the end. It's not at the end of Smallville. It's 15 years. I mean, who knows how long it is after
the character of Smallville.
It is, but it should
also
art clippings show us that he already has been the Superman that basically we see in Christopher Reeve's Superman and Superman 2. By the way, what's the best Christopher Reeve Superman movie? The one where he gives up his powers in Superman 2 and becomes mortal. And so it plays off of that to where, yeah, he has been Superman. He has been the Man of Steel, but now there's something worth more to him than having powers. And Lex is the president. That kind of is who Lex is in the comics. Oh, and by the way, change of point. This Clark Kent is part of Lex going from, I'm a mustache twirling villain in Supergirl to, now he's comic book Lex. He's awesome. It's part of it drives his utter disdain for Superman altogether because Clark without powers can still beat him up.
So you mentioned a lot of points there. The first there is that it doesn't matter because it copied the best thing about Superman 2. It's not Superman 2. It's not a story. It's about Smallville and continuing the character arcs of Smallville onto the next part. So I think him giving it up to everything is just wrong because it's not the rightful thing of his character. The only reason he's not in a suit is because the fact that Tom Welling never wanted to suit up a Superman. The only way they can get him back.
Sure, but that's a production issue.
Hold on, you said a lot of stuff. I'm responding to all your points that you said. Was the fact that he didn't want to be in. The only way that he would come back was if he didn't have to wear any sort of super suit. Then you moved on to Lex Luthor. I'm glad you brought up Lex Luthor because the fact that Michael Rosenbaum's awesome Lex Luthor was not in the Smallville reunion totally harkens off that thing. Absolutely, because Lex Luthor was the best part of Smallville overall. So just having it be with a lesser Lex Luthor just highlights the fact that the Smallville reunion was not complete.
You just brought up a bunch of points about like the production of like getting Tom Welling to come back, and that's completely irrelevant to the cameo itself. Yeah, sure, it makes it to where this is why he's doing this and not in the super suit because he didn't want to work out as much as Brandon Routh. But who cares? We get to see a character that we care about, and we get to see where they are now. Two characters that we care about. We don't get Lex. I'll give you that. But still, Clark is the big point of it. And with yours, 90s Flash. Oh, yeah, we've seen him in Elseworlds. We've seen him in no, he's not in The Flash, I don't believe. But even John Wesley Shipp, we've seen him do all of this stuff and seen his characters die in The Flash. So what's the point? Like, it's not that special that we see him sacrificing himself because we've already seen the 90s Flash and we've already seen John Wesley Shipp die.
Do I have any time left?
Yeah. You have a little time left.
Okay, because I didn't get to talk about my Wesley set. Because if we're comparing the best cameos, I'm comparing the fact that John Wesley Shipp's character actually makes sense to the ending of his show, and it affected the character overall. To the Flash itself, it was important to the story of everything. It was just a fun little blurb about Smallville that didn't have any bearing on anything whatsoever. My cameo was important and paid off the storylines from the past show, and also affects Barry and everything going forward into the future.
All right. A little bit filibustery on both ends, but that's going to happen from time to time. We're going to go into the closing sections. We're going to start off with Jacoby on this one. 45 seconds. Time to get into this.
Sure, there are a lot of like fun cameos, but I think the best cameo, the one that we can grade as the best, is the one that affects the characters and the story most going forward. I mean, Grant Gustin's Flash was supposed to die here. I mean, he was completely ready for it, and he spent the season kind of preparing his team for life without the Flash. Obviously, our Flash wasn't going to die, then there'd be no show. But of all the ways they could have written themselves out of the corner of Flash disappears in a Crisis headline, they did so in a way that honored another version of the Flash. And because the shoulders of the Flash is built on John Wesley Shipp's Flash TV 1990 show. So by giving Earth 90's Flash the way to save the world and to save Barry in order to do was that 10 seconds or am I out?
No, you still have 5.
In order to save Barry makes and for everything that's going to come forward because of that decision makes it the best cameo.
Time. All right, we now go over to Jim to wrap up the question.
Jacoby is basically just referencing a plot point that Barry is going to die in a crisis that's kind of been that since the pilot has been there that they keep in the background until this season when they now it's going to happen in Crisis on Infinite Earth. So, hey, remember this. This is now in the front. And John Wesley Shipp specifically, all he's saying is, John Wesley Shipp because of Barry Allen, because of Grant Gustin's Barry Allen is good. Because of what Grant Gustin's Barry Allen does and blah, 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 Grant Gustin's Barry Allen. Whereas my Clark Kent, Tom Welling, everyone wanted to see something more of Tom Welling's Clark Kent and what he is doing. So just a little taste. Even like I mentioned before, the Smallville theme song was this big thing. And now we actually got Tom Welling and his Clark Kent to see where he is in his life.
Time. Alrighty, let's add in the other judges here and get their thoughts. Doug, your vote did not count last time, so we're going to go to you first. Who gets your point and why?
Yeah, this one was a lot tougher than the last question. I didn't get a lot about why Tom Welling was integral to the storyline with the cameo. So I'm going to go with Jacoby. I think a lot of the points that were made by Jacoby weren't fended off real well about why his was better.
Okay. All right. Cody, who gets your point and why?
I don't know what the heck y'all are talking about. I made that clear before this started. I don't know. I don't watch the stuff. I just want to see the importance of what the cameo brought, and I think Jacoby hit the nail on the head of what I was trying to hear for. I understand that probably if you knew a little bit more about stuff that came before, it might have helped you in this argument, but the best way to sway it and defend it was Jacoby in this round, so I have to give Jacoby my point.
Yeah. All right, so Jacoby does tie things up. I would have agreed with both Doug and Cody in that Jacoby would have gotten a point. Just told me more on how essentially his that version of Flash. It's a very touching send off, and it's a very fitting way to, and it fits into the overall series of the DC Arrowverse, whatever the hell it's called now. But we now go on to question number 3, and we have incorporated the new fandom categories that were added into fandom proper, I guess it'd be, or fandom fights. And one of them is YA. So we're going into Hunger Games and Maze Runner territory. And your question is going to be, what is the one thing you would change to improve the Hunger Games series? We're going to start with Jacoby on this one. You got 1 minute. Time begins when you start talking.
Philip Seymour Hoffman's death was a blow, and it completely changed what the franchise was trying to do with Plutarch's Heaven Bee's character itself. It's very clear how important Plutarch was to the story of the Hunger Games, and we kind of know from the books what they wanted to do with his character. But of course, he died between parts 1 and 2, forcing them to reshuffle, reshoot, and rewrite kind of key scenes in order to shape the narrative better. All of that was like basically fine, except for robbing Plutarch of what made him such an interesting character in the first place. His ambiguity, like overall, because of Hoffman's death, the only resolution we get to Plutarch is a letter that kind of just like basically turns him into a good guy. He wanted like Coin dead, and how he wanted Katniss to kill him, and how he kind of put it in there overall to make things happen. I mean, that's not the path the character was taking pre his death. So just overall, I would change how they adapted his character.
Right. Over to Jim now for your opening statements and how you would feel or how you would change the Hunger Games franchise.
I would feel bad. Okay, so my answer is going to be the adaptation in general of the last two movies. The first part of Mockingjay is basically a rescue scene of Peeta and Joanna Mason at the end, and then 90 minutes of just Katniss shooting propos and Snow blows up a school, blows up a hospital, and it's just to like show you how much more evil he is. I feel like there's a random scene to where like Katniss does bad acting in front of a green screen. There's a lot in these two movies that doesn't really work in general. That the second one is less so. But the first one is just a slog and really, really terrible in general. And so I'm saying just the way that both movies are adapted.
All right, cool. All right, we will remove Mario and Luigi from the call here. Go to the 5 minutes of free form. You guys know what you're doing. Let's get it on.
So, Jacoby, have you even watched these movies lately? Because the only real scene that you lose Plutarch in the second movie, because Philip Seymour Hoffman is still obviously filming and has not passed yet before Katniss goes to the Capitol, before she stows away to the Capitol. But the only real scene that you lose him, you do see him after she shoots Coin in the face. They had a weird CGI, like pulled it from another scene, Carrie Fisher type thing, to where he just smiles about it. Which would have been better had he been living. And then the big scene that we don't have him in is the last scene where it's just like, oh, we're just literally going to take PSH's lines that he wanted to read, and then it's in a letter now, and Woody Harrelson's Haymitch is going to read them.
Yeah, have you watched these movies recently and read the books? I mean, the way that they were going on a certain path with the character itself about what was going to happen, but then because he died, they couldn't take his character to the final extreme, which is after that Coin dies, he is more elusive in becoming Secretary of State, Secretary of Communications. So you don't know if what he was after was good, or if he's just kind of an opportunist trying to rise up in the ranks itself. The way, because he died, and that we get this letter saying that you did good, this is what I wanted, he was corrupt, it turns him into a good guy, which I think is just wrong to Plutarch's character overall, and they had to work around because he died.
Now that you bring it up, yes, I did watch the movies. I watched them last week, and yes, I did read the books. But again, the debate here is not how to make the part two better, because again, PSA, I believe there is one scene that Plutarch was going to be in where they show Katniss her new outfit that's bulletproof and everything. It might be at the beginning of the second one, end of the first one. I can't exactly remember, where Effie Trinket does it instead because he hadn't shot that. But other than that, you're just talking about how to make part two better. And this isn't about part two. This is about the series as a whole. And I think the series as a whole goes out on a whimper because, again, the main parts that you're talking about, the beginning of the movie, other than that Effie Trinket replaces him scene, Philip Seymour Hoffman did that filming, and then once Katniss sneaks away to the Capitol, it's all Katniss and her crew in the Capitol, and then it gets back to Coin and the CGI Plutarch towards the end of it. So really, your choice really just fixes the last 15, not 15, probably like half hour of the second movie, and that's not what this discussion is about.
It should be about how the discussion is about what we do to improve the Hunger Games. And yes, mine would fix the last 30 minutes of the Hunger Games franchise, but that's the end of the series. That is the wrap up. You're talking about adaptation because the first part is like too much action, and you were talking about this propaganda at the beginning, and the first parts are weird. I'm talking about the ending resolution of everything as a whole. And because Plutarch's character is so important in that, and because they had to rework around that because of his death, then that ending falls flat to the heights that it could have gotten. I mean, I'm fine with the running around in the first part because that's the lead up to the final part, and that's the book itself of running around shooting propos in war. Snow blows up a hospital. Who gets and we get more scenes with Snow because Snow,
because it's not from her point of view. Yes. So now that we're not in Katniss's point of view, they also in that first movie. But again, you're just trying to save Plutarch's character, and then as a result of saving Plutarch's character, then the entire series is saved, which it's not. From the book, they completely reeled back Katniss's PTSD. It's still there, but in the books, it's much heavier. And instead, they just do the proper
One
thing
minute.
to where Katniss. Go ahead.
So I was saying, so yeah, they dial back on the PTSD, but I would actually argue that improves the novel more so itself, because the way that the books end with the PTSD and the ending of the book is very downer. It says that people cannot overcome their change and they're traumatized for it. The movies kind of try to end with that people can move on, that people can heal, that you can move on from tragedy and grow. It takes a lot of time, but it does that. So those changes are for
it not really, because the end of the movie is still basically the same. The only thing that's different is the PTSD is slightly toned down, so it's not a downer. And then, but other than that, it's basically the same ending, which again is pretty terrible from the book, which you can't really fix that. But I think the way and the lead up to it is, Gale, you could see all of this bubbling and stewing in. And then in the movies, it's just, they get to this district and Gale's like, no, let's kill him. And then it gets to the end of the second movie and Gale's like, and then she says, Gale, were you part of this? He goes, yeah. And she's like, get out.
All right, cool. Good back and forth, guys. We'll now go into the closing arguments, and we are going to start off with Jim on this one. 45 seconds to wrap up your argument.
Again, I am completely not disagreeing with Jacoby's point at all. I do think if PSH lived to finish out his scenes of this movie, that last 30 minutes would be better. But we're not debating how to make the last 30 minutes better for Plutarch's character, because basically the ending is the same. All that you would have was PSH shooting one more scene, which granted would have been a good scene, but you're not going to see that scene with him reading the lines instead of Haymitch reading a letter and going, that's what saved this. Off of the raging success and great movie of Catching Fire, you had this 2-hour like blah fest of like just downer, and none of the characters really do anything worthwhile until the very last 30 minutes.
All right, over to Jacoby for your closing arguments and wrap up the question.
Yes, my ending and my change to Plutarch would change the last 30 minutes of the thing. But as I said, that is the most important part of the series. That is the wrap up to everything as it goes. The point of Plutarch's character changed because he died. And that is not right to what the series was trying to do. I think the lead up, as Jim says, is like the blah of the first of Mockingjay is necessary to have for the final thing. So the first part is war. The first part is messy. The first part is just horrible fight after fight after fight. So you can have the second movie with all the resolutions, which didn't even get to hit the heights that it should have because Plutarch's character wasn't around to actually bring that point home to where it should have been. So that is why my point is Plutarch's character, but the Plutarch's character represents the ending of the franchise as the whole.
Time. All right, that's really good. I was quite impressed with this. We're now going to bring in what are we going to call him now? We'll call him Wario and Waluigi.
Not ending on
we'll let you guys figure out.
Yeah, it's so difficult.
All right. So we'll go to the judges. Cody, I will let you go first. Who gets your point and why?
This is super difficult. I think they both argued it really, really well. I'm leaning towards Jacoby on this one.
Okay.
And it's just because of his closing statement. I think it was so back and forth. I think they're so even. I think his closing kind of tied it up. I 100% agree with Jim on how Mockingjay was adapted. But he kind of just left himself open with like stuff like saying the ending's not that great and stuff like that. There's nothing that you can change. But he had a lot of shots on the character not meaning that much, but I think Jacoby brought it back where he does mean something. But again, there's 3 judges, so I may be wrong on this. That's just where I'm leaning.
I'm gonna go next, and then I actually disagree. I am actually giving my point to Jim, and for me, I think it was Jacoby got a little bit distracted. I think he focused a little bit too much on the book. And how like that was sort of tied into everything, but that's just me. Like that's just me personally. Jim sold me a little more on how this didn't really need to be separated into two things. I think Jacoby did well in terms of closing and trying to get back. But I agree with Cody. It was a good back and forth, and this match has been tough the entire time. But we now go to Doug to break the tie. Who gets your point and why?
Am I judging either one of you in a match soon? You leave the hard decision to me. No, I'm just playing. No, this is like each judge before me has said, it's a tough match. This you guys did really well back and forth. I think the overall argument that Jim made was I think a little bit more where he kind of, got under the skin of Jacoby. Like, I saw Jacoby get shaken up a little bit with a couple of the points. And Jim kind of painted a picture for me, which I could see with it being adapted, with it being more streamlined as one singular movie.
Okay. So Jim does get the point there as we go into the last question, and probably for me personally the question I'm most excited for going into this match, and we are going to Fandom Oscars, and that is, what is the best fandom film nominated at this year's Oscars? And we are going to be starting off with Jim on this one. You will have a minute opening as always, and it is 2-1. So Jim, if you do get this point, you will win. Jacoby, if you get this point, we will be going into our speed round tiebreaker. So we'll back it over to Jim. The floor is yours. Whenever you want.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I got to bring up my notes. Okay, here we go. I will be nominating for your consideration Toy Story 4. When this movie was announced, I think the general opinion of it was, what are you doing? Toy Story 3 was a perfect ending. Why are you doing this? And then we got the information, it's going to be like about Woody having a midlife crisis as a toy. And it's like, what are you doing? Why are you making this movie? We all love Toy Story, but why are you making this? This sounds terrible. And now that the movie is out and we have seen it, it's maybe the best Toy Story movie, and it is just an incredible movie. And now we can't even think about the possibility of living without this movie. It's such a great sequel to Toy Story 3. And how the new Andy's toys fit into the life of Bonnie, and how they don't.
All right. Over to Jacoby for your opening arguments. What do you feel was the best fandom film nominated at this year's Oscars?
Okay, first off, on paper, the best fandom film nominated at the Oscars is Joker. I mean, it's leading the pack with nominations with 11 nominations. It's the first R-rated movie to cross $1 billion. It is the most commercially successful superhero movie of all time, and it gave us another iconic performance for the Joker when many thought that just could not happen. But I know it's not just about what's on paper. My argument about why Joker is the best not only stems from all the deserved awards that it's nominated for, but although it does deserve a lot of them, but also for what it does for the superhero movie genre overall. I mean, I think to classify as the best fandom film, you got to look at its impact going forward, which is why far and away, I think Joker is the best fandom film nominated at the Oscars.
All right. All right. Adding a little bit early there. We'll see how that pays off. We will get rid of, what do we call you? Triple H and Shawn Michaels. I don't know which one of you has Sweet Chin Music. But 5 minutes of freeform. You guys know the drill. Let's get it on.
Go ahead.
I think Toy Story 4 is nowhere near a bad movie, but I think to me it also still reeks of Disney Pixar keeping one of its most famous IPs alive for a cash grab and to sell merchandise in Disney Plus TV shows. Take a look at Forky Ask a Question on Disney Plus. It does nothing inventive with its story, and it makes me so mad with what they did with Buzz's character by just turning him into a complete and utter idiot and ruining his character development from the past 3 movies. I mean, sure, it's a Woody story. I get that. It's a Woody story. But I think for Toy Story 4 to justify its existence, it needed to kind of be better than what it was and needed to feel more like just an extended OVA of Bo Peep's Lost Years.
That's the nitpick of all nitpicks that Buzz is kind of like dull to begin with, and you just brought up like, oh, they made a Disney Plus show out of it, which somehow lessens the movie, which it doesn't. And by the way, you brought up Forky, who, again, back to my opening statement, you heard, the main character is going to be a spork that Bonnie puts stuff on, and his crisis of coming alive and becoming a toy. Again, sounds ridiculous and stupid, but Forky was amazing. And then you also bring up the point of, Disney Pixar is just going with one of their blah, blah, blah properties. The Joker is like everyone after the Jared Leto thing was like, no, give us like a gritty Joker thing and give us like an Oscar-nominated winning actor that could actually do some real stuff with it. So they got Joaquin Phoenix.
I guess, first of all, you said it's like, because Buzz was dull to begin with. No, but I think there's a difference between Buzz being dull and Buzz being kind of just stupid and from where he was at in previous movies. And because he is the co-lead of this Toy Story franchise, I think the 4th movie should do more for his character overall. The fact that you're saying like, everybody wanted a dark, gritty Joker movie. No, that's not what everybody wanted. This movie was a risky investment to begin with. Warner Bros. Did not want to greenlight it. They gave it a low budget, and there was tons of talk beforehand about how this movie was never going to be successful, and it proved it wrong. I think both of our movies had to overcome expectations of why they were there, but Joker just did that so much better by what it turned out as, with Toy Story 4 just being okay in the middle.
Completely disagree that nobody had any expectations for Joker. As soon as it was like, this is a low budget gritty before he becomes the Joker, basically like a what's the one where is it Killing Joke, where it's kind of like added kind of like a Killing Joke type feel, where it's like, this is what leads him up to becoming the Joker. Everyone was like, that sounds awesome. But it's just really derivative of like movies that we've already seen that are better, like King of Comedy, Network, Taxi Driver. It's basically that movie, but let's shoehorn like a young Bruce Wayne in it for no reason whatsoever, other than the fact that, he's going to be Batman in 30 years because his dad dies at the end of this movie. Thomas Wayne, I'll give you, he's in this movie and it makes sense, but there is absolutely no reason to have Bruce in here other than the fact that they want to go, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
You think that the general consensus of the Joker movie was met with praise when it was first announced? That you said that because it's a character who does not have a backstory in the comic books, is now finally getting a backstory in the big thing. You think the reaction was, great, that's what we really want to see? You think that they wanted more Joker after Jared Leto's Joker, after the iconic Heath Ledger Joker? No, this movie had to crawl and scratch its way to the top and prove of itself. The fact that it homages those famous 80s crime movies was a way to change the narrative of how superhero movies go forward and change how we're going to see movies going forward. And that's what makes it so great.
And you're saying it had to scratch and claw. No, it didn't. It opened at like the top of the box office. And your own point, it crossed $1 billion at the box office because everyone wanted to see this movie. Everyone wanted to go and see this, which the same thing with Toy Story once we found out it was good. But Toy Story, there's almost no wasted anything in this movie. Whereas like the Zazie Beetz storyline is completely irrelevant. And it's like, it just shows how he's going crazy. But it's like, that was it's like goes off in a circle. The middle of Joker is rough, not the middle of Toy Story, because the middle of Toy Story, you have the whole Gabby being evil part, and Gabby not getting to be with the girl that she like imagined it and had this whole dream of being with this one girl. She then gets to realize at the end of the movie that they built her in the middle, like, the moment you as a toy, you won't meet your kid until you need it. You can't force it.
The fact that Gabby is the weakest of all 4 villains of all the Toy Story franchise is just such a bummer. I mean, her resolution is basically resolved with Woody saying, "Hey, don't be bad. It's okay to have that," and then she gets over it, which just makes it bad.
All right, interesting freeform there. We'll now go into the closing arguments, and we are going to start with Jacoby on this one. You got 45 seconds, and I will remind you that you do need to hit this point to go into a tiebreaker.
Thanks. Okay, I think both movies actually had to answer the same big question going into it when they were announced. It was like, is this really necessary? I mean, Toy Story had the perfect ending to its trilogy, and anything other than perfection threatened to undo that. Joker was a dark movie about a villain who famously doesn't have a backstory, so why should we explore it? And I think only one of those movies completely justified its existence by expanding the scope of what the superhero genre can do, and by creating this kind of unforgettable, moving, jarring movie experience overall. It answered the question of why we should explore the backstory of a villain with no backstory by showing what happens to those on the outskirts of society that we don't think about too much because they turn to the Joker. And for that reason, and for the fact that Toy Story 4 is middling, Joker is the best film.
All right. Now I'll go over to Jim to wrap up the question.
Joker completely relies on a performance by Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur. The rest of the movie it's just carried by Joaquin, whereas Toy Story 4 has just fantastic characters. Forky is new, Gabby is new, Ducky and Bunny are new, and all of them are great. Also, Duke Kaboo. Toy Story introduces these new characters, and they are great. And just to drive home the fact, I mean, the villain turn for Gabby to she just finds the girl that loves her for who she is instead of like being this old piece of trash is much more compelling than anything that's in the Joker. Because all you really have for Joker is you have Joaquin Phoenix's performance and nothing else you care about at all.
All right, cool. Very good argument, gentlemen. I am quite impressed once again. We are now going to bring back in the Rocket Sock Connection.
What you call him?
So the Rocket Sock Connection.
Cody is definitely the sock. Cody is definitely the sock.
All right, we're going to go to judge decision. I'm going to go first, and then I'll pass it off. I think Jim took something out of his former teammate's book of Caleb Coho and made him fight his fight. I think Jacoby kind of slipped out of the gate in the freeform with the Disney Plus sort of Sporky thing, and then Jim just sort of took that and let him and sort of controlled it from there. I'm sort of going to give you a point for me, but there are two other judges here, and I'm going to go to Doug next. Who gets your point and why?
I actually feel opposite. I think Jacoby handled the fight well. I think he took it. I think something that you missed him saying was that it was a cash grab. Right from the beginning. That's why they made Sporky. That's why they continued it. And I didn't really hear much about that, maybe once, but there was nothing else brought up about it. I didn't hear why it was less of a meddling film. There was a lot of pointers that I heard from Jacoby a little bit more. So Jacoby gets my point for this one.
All right. And Cody to break the tie.
Just to let you know, Jacoby, there's an opening in First Order since your leader hates you, apparently. I thought you were in control of this because I think Jim threw so much shots at the Joker, which is great. But you threw shots at Toy Story 4 and you kind of just passed over them. Like, I think your shot on Buzz was huge. I think the Gabby Gabby thing was a major takedown on that. I think you also painted the picture because you're like $1 billion, but like you painted out the picture that it was not going to be that way if the movie wasn't successful. Like, it wouldn't have made the stuff without it. So hats up to you. I give you the point on that one.
All right. It is a tie game, gentlemen, which means that we go into the super speed round tiebreaker question.
Happy and very sad.
So how it's going to work is I'm going to give you the question. Once I complete said question, you will then get to give your answers. If I hear you first, you will be going first. It is a 40-second opening followed by a 30-second rebuttal. We are much more strict on time in this one, so each second is going to count. So once again, whenever I'm going to say the question, it'll be done, and then you give your answers. If I hear you first, you will go first.
And you said, sorry, I apologize. You said 40-30? 40?
It is 40-30.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I get to vote first on this. Thank God.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you do. You lucky little bastard. All right. So your speed round question is as follows. Listen attentively. What is the saddest moment in a DreamWorks movie?
Let me see if I've seen any dream.
I just can't think. I know the moment. I just can't think of character names. It's when what's his name? It's
I'm gonna say when you think that Hiccup is dead at the end of How to Train Your Dragon.
Okay, thank you for giving me his name. It's when Hiccup's dad dies in How to Train Your Dragon 2.
Okay, so I heard Jim first of when you think Hiccup is dead and How to Train Your Dragon versus Hiccup's dad dying in How to Train Your Dragon 2 versus Jacoby. So, Jim, you have 40 seconds. Time begins when you start talking.
I think with the original How to Train Your Dragon, it was something that we didn't really know anything about yet. It was a brand new franchise that we didn't know would even be a franchise at this point. So the idea that they might have actually at the end of this big climactic fight with the big like whatever dragon at the end of that one, and then it ends with this big like. Big raining down of ash, and then you think that Hiccup and the dragon and Toothless are actually dead, or Hiccup at least, and then you find and it just hits you in the bottom of your stomach, and there's nothing that stops that.
All right, over to Jacoby now for your 40 seconds.
I think Hiccup and his dad have one of the most complex, one of the best relationships in mostly any animated movie that you see. Because in the first movie, we saw how strained their relationship had become, and by the end of the movie, you saw that they had earned each other's respect and that he had changed, and they had a truly loving relationship. Which makes the blow of him dying in the second movie all the more painful because he had finally earned his father's love. His father had finally come around to the point that dragons were good, and that he was willing to die to protect dragons. In order to do that is a complete sad ending to his character that is just devastating, but also so fitting and so beautiful all at the same time. And it's the best thing that the How I Train Your Dragon franchise has ever done.
All right. Over to Jim now for your 30-second rebuttal.
I think the differences in this is that because you're in the first movie with Hiccup, and he has already, in essence, saved his people with showing them that dragons can be trained and be friends with them, and he has in essence saved his people already. And it's the first movie, so you actually didn't know where this was going, what it was going to do. Whereas with How to Train Your Dragon 2, I think by the time you get to the end of the movie, you already kind of know that something bad is going to happen. We're going to lose somebody going into the third movie, and it happens to be his dad, so we're more ready for it.
All right, Jacoby, you're here to take a rebuttal and to wrap up the match.
I disagree completely with almost everything that you said, because I think the fact that you're basing it off of the protagonist of the animated kids movie might have died at the end of the movie. I think because we all know that that's not going to happen. I think that negates the part of the real sadness of that moment, because that is not truly going to be how they end that movie. I think, but in How to Train Your Dragon 2, they do pull the trigger about that. Even if we go off your point about how something bad's going to happen, that doesn't take the weight of his dad dying, who he worked so hard to earn his love, any less sad about that.
Time. All right, that was really good back and forth. But let's go over to the judges. Start off with Cody this time. Cody, who gets your point and why?
I think Jim stumbled out of the gate, but I think his rebuttal was strong. I think Jacoby painted the picture really well of why it meant so much. I'm going to go with Jim. I think I just heard a little bit more from Jim on this argument from me. Just saying that saving the people, going down, didn't think, it didn't know where it was going to go, and to think that I was just going to axe off the first character. That is a gut moment that happened in the first one. So I'm going to go with Jim.
Okay. Doug, we'll go to you next. How would you?
This is really tough. I don't think there was enough strikebacks against Jacoby's argument or his points that he was making. So I'm going to give the point to Jacoby.
I hate having to break ties, because I could be getting some passive-aggressive matches from either one of you. So let's see which one of you is going to hate me more. One of you gave me a more fitting argument in terms of the actual question of what's the saddest moment in DreamWorks movie, and I think in that perspective alone, I have to give it to Jacoby. I'm so torn, because I could probably rewatch this like 4 or 5 different times, and I could probably go either way. It's never an easy spot, and I think the judges can agree, being a judge here, and I think you as players as well could understand. Jacoby gets it for me, but I would like to see this match in the future. But with that being said, your winner by a very split decision, Jacoby Bancroft. Holy cow! It's weird. It's like with this first season, because it's sort of peek behind the curtains. It's been a little while since we've recorded an episode. So to get back into terms of like hosting a debate, it's very I wouldn't say baptism by fire, but it's kind of like just getting back into the scheme of things and just the general rush of debate, I find. But let's go to our winner. Let's go to Jacoby. You were down 2-1 going to the question 4. How did you feel knowing that you had to hit Joker to go to the tie?
Oh, it totally made me scared, because honestly, it threw me, because I thought I had that Rocky points. Like it was the only one I was like kind of pretty confident. So when I didn't get that, I was like, oh crap, this is not going to go my way like at all. So it really, I guess, forced me to kind of reevaluate how I wanted to go forward. But that was just so knowing that I needed to get that point was nerve-wracking as this whole match was.
I'm not quite sure who your opponent is next, but I would imagine it is a cornucopia of some of the triple threat winners, plus some other returning players from our original 16-man tournament. But if you could face somebody down the road, who would you like to face?
I'm not even sure who won a lot of those things, but I don't know. Just don't make me fight Jim again, because that was the most nerve-wracking thing that I've had in quite some time. So, any opponent I think is going to be fun. Everyone that I've faced brings a different type of arguing style to their sort of thing. So it's just someone new to out and to discuss things with and be this ball of nerves. So, but overall, I don't want to take it away because Jim was just amazing in like every single turn, and it was really fun fighting him. He's a funny dude. We can joke and go back and forth and for everything. So that was a lot of fun. I can say now.
Congratulations to you once again. We now are going to go over to Jim. Jim, I was really impressed with your performance. I think this shows that whenever. Because like I think it showed that you put some prep time in, and that you didn't take Jacoby lightly. Ultimately, it did come down to the last question. But how did you feel about your performance?
I haven't watched a fucking DreamWorks movie in like fucking 5 years. That isn't How to Train Your Dragon 3 in theaters. So that kind of hurt a little bit. I kind of felt as the underdog going in this because YA. I haven't read Mockingjay in like 9 years, and I watched the second one for the first time like 2 days ago. So I didn't really feel really good about any of these except for Rocky, because last time when I played Tim, the good brother Tim Bracala, it was like I got like Power Rangers in like Avatar, so it was like he had no chance and I could just dominate those. This one I actually did have to do a little more prep in it. But yeah, clearly this was fixed. Brooklyn, I hate you, and I'm going to send you a bunch of I'm going to send Doug passive-aggressive messages about Brooklyn, and then Doug, can send the passive-aggressive screenshots to Brooklyn. So,
all right. Well, I will. I guess I'll go over to Doug now and start off with Judge's final thoughts. How do you feel about getting passive-aggressive messages from Jim?
It's okay.
I love you.
Love you too, Mitch.
It's okay. I'll accept them gladly. This was a tough match. This was on a level of a championship style match. You're both contenders, and you both got hell of a comeback games. Like, it's ridiculously good. It was a great match.
Right. Cody, first match of season 2.5, 3, 2. I'm not sure what we're called. 2, 3. Is now done. How do you feel?
I think if we paired up anybody besides Jim and Jacoby, like with another one, I think they would be meeting in like opportunity to face Robert for the title. I think that's where the picture lies. But they went together, and that's what's kind of how the matchup went. Coho's lost a couple matches at this point, so I kind of want to see Coho versus Jim. Like, that's what I want. I want that match. Because I think that will be the loudest, most angry fight that we could put on screen for everybody. And I would pay good money to see that. They would pick categories to sweet douches to each other. It'd be great. I'm excited for Jacoby because I think Jacoby. I don't know why Jacoby goes in doubting himself so much. Because he's actually got a really good debate style and he preps really well. It's proven in normal trivia and it's proven now in debate. If you give him time, he's one of the most dangerous people in this community in any regards. So the next person that places Jacoby, if they don't do prep, they're going to get ran over. I 100% believe that. I think Jacoby could be facing Timbercall at the end of the season for the title.
I will echo the statements of Doug and Cody. If this is what we're getting in our season opener, oh boy, we're in for a treat for this year. I think this is a great way to kick off the match. It was a very even, very good back and forth, and I applaud both of you for your performances. But that is going to wrap up our first episode of the new season of Nerdgasm. I do want to thank our judges, Cody and Doug for coming in, for Jacoby and Jim for a fantabulous match, to our great editor in the sky, Tim Bercala, for editing this. You can check out the rest of Multiplex stuff, Fandom, Warzone, a couple of new programs that we may or may not have announced in the near future. As of recorded this, the Free For All has not gone up, so if you haven't checked Free For All, go check that out and then come back here. But be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Multiplex.com or tpublic.com/multiplex. There's some sick t-shirts on there, brah. But cheers, guys, and as always, drive safe.
Drive on safe.